Hey guys, in this week's vlog we're going to talk about Mass Effect 1 Legendary Edition, and how while there are a lot of really positive changes, some things are still exactly the same as they were 14 years ago. When the COVID-19 pandemic first started, like many gamers, I was running out of things to play because there weren't new games that were coming out because of the situation. So I decided to go back and replay all three Mass Effect games, not Andromeda, but the main Mass Effect games I decided to replay in their entirety. So that was in 2020. Fast forward to now, May of 2021, and we have the Legendary Edition. So I felt like it was a good time to do another video on this, as I have a good time frame to be able to reference the Legendary Edition to the regular games. These videos are going to be split up across 3 different videos, one for each game. And of course, before we go any further, just know that there are spoilers. However, this is a, 14-year-old game, so hopefully you've played it by now. If not, maybe don't watch the video then. I want to start off by saying that this is by far the definitive version of Mass Effect. In every way, it is superior to the original. That being said, it still has a lot of the issues that the original first game had, but again, there are some improvements here and there. And if you're wondering why my Femme Shepard looks different than the default version, it's because in the original Mass Effect 1, this was the default Femme Shepard, and I've always preferred that. Now onto the game itself. Like the original Mass Effect 1, in this game, the powers are still kind of janky to use. Your targeting is always a little bit inconsistent. Sometimes your powers just don't seem that effective, especially when the majority of the damage that you do is from your guns. To my knowledge, Mass Effect 1 didn't have biotic combos, so your adept powers pretty much served just to get enemies out of cover so that you could shoot them, meaning that guns were your primary form of damage in Mass Effect 1. And on the topic of guns, the guns were never great to use. In the original game, or in this game, they're still pretty much fundamentally the same thing, where the targeting isn't super great, the damage isn't great at first, but you do get better weapons, of course. But one major improvement that the Legendary Edition brought was that no matter what class you're playing, Shepard can use all guns. In the original Mass Effect 1, if you tried to use a sniper rifle as an adept, you would be able to shoot it, but you wouldn't be able to zoom in, and your targeting reticle would just be massive. So even up close, you'd still have no chance of hitting something with a sniper rifle. Because the game's powers were never super great in the first, and you had to rely on your guns, it was really hard to be an adept. But it is the class that I prefer playing, especially when we get into 2 and 3, because the powers are just amazing, especially in 3. But for story and consistency purposes, I wanted to stay as an adept in all 3 games. You can change your classes between games if you like, but that's the way that I like to play Shepard. Now, Mass Effect 1 is a very unique game compared to 2 and 3. The Mass Effect series changed pretty radically over its 3 core games. The first game was always very RPG-centric. You had guns with different stats, and those guns had different classes, and qualifications, and manufacturers had different specialties. So there was a lot of inventory to sort through and deal with and choose which ones you want to use, but you could still fundamentally build your Shepard in the exact way that you want to because of the variety of gun choices. But even though Mass Effect 1 was strong on the RPG elements, it was always very weak on the shooting elements. But of course that changes over time, and we'll address that when we get to the Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 videos. Now, even though Mass Effect 1 was heavy on the RPG elements, it was also heavy on item management and spending time in menus dealing with your items. In 2021, it feels antiquated to have a game that has item limits, because you do have a maximum item limit, and Mass Effect 1 throws a lot of items at you all the time, even if you don't pick them up. If you just shoot some Geth, you're going to pick up some ammo mods. And at some point in time, you need to go through your inventory and either break them down into Omnigel, or you need to sell them. So you do spend a lot of time in your menus in Mass Effect 1. Mass Effect 1 was also different because its shooting mechanic was based on an overheating system rather than an ammo clip kind of system. So you had to manage your guns not getting too hot. If they got too hot, they would overheat and you wouldn't be able to shoot for a period of time. but in Mass Effect 2 and 3, you eventually move to ammo. Some people prefer one system over the other. I'm indifferent, frankly, and I feel like they each suit their respective games just fine. So no love or hate there, it's just kind of the way it is. Now, some other things that were addressed in the Legendary Edition. One big change is that the Mako, the land vehicle that you use for some missions, has been improved in terms of handling. And while I tend to agree with that statement that it does handle a little bit better, as in you don't just drive off into a pit of lava or instantly die when you land in lava, it's still fundamentally the same awful vehicle it's always been. It just handles slightly better this time. It's not helped by a couple things that were always problems in the Mass Effect games. For one, terrain generation on the random planets that you land on, and of course those are optional missions by the way, but terrain generation in some of those missions is just awful, and no amount of handling improvement on the Mako is going to make dealing with the terrain a lot easier. They did add a boost function that you can use with shift to help you get up some of those mountains, but still, like, the Mako struggles with vertical terrain, and some maps just have purely vertical terrain. I don't know why it was ever like that in the first place, but it's still a problem in Mass Effect 1. So there was one mission where I just couldn't find an easy way to the target, so I just abandoned it entirely. They also made Thresher Maws a lot more of a pain to deal with. They took some design cues for the Thresher Maws from Mass Effect 2, and they implemented it into Mass Effect 1. And while that's great that the Thresher Maws present a little bit more of a challenge, it doesn't help that the Mako itself is just, again, kind of hard to drive, especially when you're shooting. On PC, when you use the Mako and you're shooting, you don't actually use A or D, which would allow you to strafe left or right, to move the Mako. The Mako moves in whatever direction your mouse is facing, so it's really hard to drive sideways while also trying to shoot the Thresher Maw. And the Thresher Maws do a lot more damage, and with your Mako, you can repair it, but you can't shoot, and you also drive slower. So there's a changed system to it where there's a risk versus reward function to it, where you need to decide the proper time to repair, the proper time to run away, or the proper time to attack. You don't encounter that many Thresher Maws, but when you do in the Mako, it's kind of not fun to deal with. But they are more of a challenge now, and some people may like that. Other things about the game that I think are important to mention is that it is fundamentally a much better looking game. They changed the lighting in a lot of circumstances. BioWare showed off screenshots prior to this game coming out of what some of the lighting changes look like, and some of them weren't well received, but I think overall the game just looks better. You can actually see people's faces now, which is huge. They also changed the UI to be more in line with what you see in Mass Effect 2 and 3, and while that's not a major change, I do think it's important to help keep the games with a consistent look and feel. And I think it also goes without mentioning too that everything you loved about the first game is still here, with just a lot of new things to love. It still has the same story beats, the same characters, the same voice acting, all of the same missions are here. And in fact, in the Legendary Editions, you do get all of the DLC that were released for the games, all except for one Mass Effect 2 DLC, I believe, but pretty much you get everything. And on top of all those improvements, they've also made the game just run better. When I played Mass Effect 1 over a year ago on PC, I actually had to download some mod files in order to make it past bugged versions of the game that they never addressed. I still did encounter random bugs in Mass Effect 1, but it wasn't nearly as problematic as it was a year ago. And the game just loads a lot faster. Mass Effect 1 has been infamous for its elevator loading scenes, but thankfully they're much reduced at this point in time. If you've never played Mass Effect, now's a great time to start. This is the best version of Mass Effect that we're probably ever going to get. There are still elements of Mass Effect 1 that are still not great, especially like power usage. The guns are better, but they're still kind of janky at times. The inventory management isn't fun, but it is still the same game, and there's never been a better time to play it. And it goes without saying that just about everything you do in Mass Effect 1 will carry over to 2 and 3, so literally go and do everything. Do every side mission. All of it's going to come back, and the game is going to reference it later on. You may not remember all of these interactions, but these people that you help or lives that you change, they will remember you. So that being said, I decided to do just about everything I could in Mass Effect 1. And for those wondering about my major story decisions, my Femme Shepard is an adept, She's Paragon. We romanced Liara because Liara is the best character. Garrus is a close second, I think. And we left Ashley on Vermeer because Ashley sucks.
Malenko, radio Joker and tell him to meet us at the bomb.
Commander.
You know it's the right choice, LT.
If you're interested in checking out Mass Effect Legendary Edition, it's available on Origin, which is where I played it, but you can also get it on Steam and probably some other places as well. If you liked this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. My Twitch and Discord links are below if you'd like to stay connected with me or come check out my stream sometime. And of course, we'll see you in the next video.